So good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for attending this session. My name is Amanda Field, and I will be presenting my lightning talk on using your competitive spirit to your advantage. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to the SWE RMS Spring Summit Committee members for giving me this opportunity. So thank you so much for having me. All right, so before diving into the topic, I'd like to give you a little background as to who I am and what brought me here to talk about this today. So I graduated this past May in 2020 with my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Mines. I stayed at Mines and continued on to get my master's in engineering and technology management, which I will graduate with this May. I love playing sports, petting other people's dogs while I don't have my own, traveling to new places and trying new things. I was fortunate enough to have many different internship opportunities while at Mines with Northrop Grumman, Sierra Nevada Corporation, and Ball Aerospace. After I graduate, I'll be returning to Northrop in a 3-year rotational program as a future technical leader. As you can probably tell by this slide, I love trying new things and exploring new opportunities. Throughout my life, I've always been driven to succeed, but around the time that I entered college, I began to find that despite all the success you could say I was experiencing on paper, I really wasn't feeling very fulfilled or happy with any of it. This led me down a path to identify what was causing me to feel this way and how to turn it around. So during this phase in my life, one quality of mine stuck out above the rest: my competitiveness. I was doing well in school, in clubs, on sports teams, but I was struggling to connect with people and make strong friendships and feel fulfilled. I realized that we're all subject to the same measuring stick throughout our lives. It comes in many forms, though. It can appear as grades when we're all the way starting out in kindergarten, even all the way through college and professional degrees. It can also appear as test scores. We take ACTs, we take SATs. Different degrees, what level of degree you have, how many of them you have, if you have one at all, what job you get, how many offers you have for jobs, salary and how much money you're making, certifications, what house you live in, what it looks like, what it's furnished with, awards you get along the way, and even appearance and how we present ourselves. So society teaches us that success looks a certain way, and there's a limited amount of it to go around. This creates the culture of competition that many of us experience, which drives us to compare ourselves to others around us in each of these categories, as well as many more. So now that we've addressed how society drives our culture of competition, you may be saying not all competition is bad though, right? And I would completely agree. I'm a very competitive person myself, and there are two main forms of competition, I would say. So there's a healthy competition, which can be described as benefiting the whole, helping individuals reach their personal potential, and recognizing the value of the journey. When there's an environment focused on healthy competition, everyone becomes better for it. Competition can be an incredible force for good when it pushes people beyond their comfort zones to unleash new potential, and they're enjoying the journey versus focusing on the end result. And then vice versa, there's very unhealthy competition. And this usually appears as people seeking validation and attention from others. It diminishes others around you, offers a limited amount of success to be had, and fosters a winning at all costs mentality. So knowing that there are two different types of competition, one that can make ourselves and those around us better, and one that can cripple personal and professional relationships in pursuit of our goals, what drives our competitive spirit in the first place? To that, I would answer that the way we define personal success drives how we embrace and utilize our competitive spirit in everyday interactions. So for me personally, during this time early in college, when I started to realize that I was striving for things that weren't fulfilling me just to prove myself to others, I decided to reevaluate my definition of success. I realized that outperforming those around me, getting noticed by others, and working harder than everyone else was driving a lot of my actions, but leaving me feeling no success at all. So I took a step back and thought about what would actually make me feel successful and fulfilled moving forward. I quickly noticed that it looked very different. Helping others experience their own successes, sharing my successes with those closest to me, and knowing in my heart that I put my best foot forward on every task I was attempting were all things that make me feel successful in my life. Now looking at these two lists, it's easy to notice a key shift. What I thought success looked like centered almost entirely on my achievements in relation to others versus the list on the right, which centers on the feeling of fulfillment and the capabilities of me alone. So if you've ever found yourself in a situation like I had, or you're interested in doing some self-reflection to investigate your own competitive spirit, I'd encourage you to think about your own definition of success. And once you have, really think about if it's more focused on you in relation to others or your internal emotions and experiences. So now that we have recentered our definition of success to not be determined by our achievements as they compare to others, how do we create environments that foster healthy competition? Assuming you're anything like me, which I sort of am since you're here, refocusing your definition of success in yourself likely won't eliminate your urge to compete. As someone who's been involved with sports my whole life, there is a competitive spirit in me that wants to be used for good. So I have some tips and tricks that I've used over the years that have helped me to do this. So the first would be setting pride aside. Setting pride aside. The essence of this is focusing more on the experience you're having versus your desire or need to win. The next would be not fearing vulnerability. So this was a really tough one for me personally. For a while, I was really afraid to share my struggles and weaknesses with others for fear of them being exposed and used against me, which luckily I realized was a pretty irrational fear and a little negative way to look at people and relationships. But I've since learned that being open and honest about your struggles creates community and makes teams stronger and more successful as a whole because of it. I would also advise you to say no to things, which perfectly ties into our keynote speaker, which is quite ironic. But this was a big thing for me early on in college. For a while, I was really eager to say yes to absolutely everything, purely to prove to others that I could do it. I knew I had the capability. I didn't know if I had the time, but I wanted to prove to others that I had the ability to do it, and the best way to showcase that was taking on the task at hand. But since I've learned that saying no gives someone else the opportunity to grow and succeed, which aligns much more with how I define my personal success today. And then lastly, I'd encourage you to reflect on what's important to you. Refer back to your definition of success often. Put it on a whiteboard in your room or a notepad in your office and remind yourself of what fills your cup so you don't get off track. As a really competitive person, it can be hard to silence that urge you have internally to compete on a lot of things, even in personal relationships and whatnot. So I know personally coming back to my definition of success helps realign me on my goals and prevents me from competing in situations that don't warrant it. So before I leave you today, I do want to share a recent story of mine. Early this year, my best friend and I had a fun idea to start a little apparel and design business together. We had created a design to empower and showcase women in STEM, and we wanted to launch our business with it. We created our business on a 50-50 partnership structure, but quickly realized that having a 50-50 partnership wasn't as straightforward as we'd envisioned. We struggled and still to this day catch ourselves struggling with comparison. We compared ourselves against one another on things such as who was putting in more hours, who was devoting more time to their tasks, and who had more tasks in general. We really had to work together to put our competitive natures aside and do what was best for our friendship and our business. It can be so easy to get caught up in the details and forget that everyone has their own strengths and capabilities. In order to better serve each other and our joint goals, we had to play to each of our strengths and give each other the space to thrive independently. I share this story with you to highlight that as someone who's extremely competitive myself, there are situations that warrant healthy competition, but there are also those situations where there is no place for competition. Our pursuit of success should never be at the expense of our most cherished personal and working relationships. So as I finish my talk for you today, I'd like to leave you with this one sentence. So if you remember nothing else from what I've said today, I'd encourage you to try to remember this. Spend less time thinking about how you stack up to others and more time exploring how you can learn and grow to reach your full potential. So thank you all so much again for attending this talk. I'd be more than happy to take some questions right now if there are any, but you can definitely connect with me via email or LinkedIn if you want to follow up and talk about this topic any further. But thank you so much for your time and this opportunity.